another edition of the new ND Nation Radio.
We're going inside them. We're going outside them. Inside them and outside them. And when we get them on a run once, we're going to keep them on a run.
And Notre Dame, as number one goes down, Syracuse undefeated no more.
This is now top-notch college hockey.
Everything here at Notre Dame has been done on faith and a commitment to excellence. You are Notre Dame. You are special.
You would impart some wisdom or some tips on the guys coming in.
I would probably say stay on top of your academics.
North County broke free at the 30, 35, 40. The Rocket is trying to do it again.
And you're also going to walk out of here with a degree from the University of Notre Dame. In this lifetime, you don't have to prove nothing to nobody except yourself.
You know, this play like a champion sign, Rocket Ishmael's touched many times. Jerome Bettis has touched many times. You know, the best stadium you play in, I'm going to say Notre Dame.
We're going to get them on a run. We're going to go, 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 go. And we aren't going to stop until we go to that goal line. Don't forget, man, today, we're going to win.
All right, guys, we just had a great talk with Jerome Sapp, talking a little football, getting our bounty talk. So it's time. Let's talk some Big East basketball. We got the tourney going on, and let's welcome our next guest. This is the man from Cincinnati's 1530 ESPN every day, my favorite radio host. This is Mo Egger. Mo, thank you for joining us on the new ND Nation Radio.
I'm your favorite radio host?
Yeah, man. I listen to you every day.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, you're the only person I know that can deal with the pain and agony of being a Bengals and Reds fan like me.
You've got to have thick skin and a heavy heart, no question about that.
For sure. So how you feeling today, man? Your Bearcats had one heck of a game with me, even though I'm not a UC fan. I got to give them credit for a hell of a win in double overtime today. How anxious were you through that whole game?
It was, you know, even if you just look at the box score and you don't know who necessarily won the game, it's hard to believe they won it. I mean, this is a perimeter shooting team that goes 2 of 21 from behind the arc. They shoot less than 40%. They get out rebounded. Deion Dixon misses 13 shots. Sean Kilpatrick is pretty much non-existent. Yancey Gates doesn't outplay Henry Sims. They miss big free throws down the stretch. They beat the 14th ranked team in the country. You know, that is. I often say on my radio show, you know, good teams win in spite of, and losing teams lose because of. You know, for years I've watched this team lose because of this, or lose because of that, lose because they lack this offensively, or lose because they weren't necessarily deep. By the way, they got almost nothing from their bench today. They found a way on a neutral floor against an NCAA tournament-bound team to win in spite of, and I think most important for them, if there was any lingering doubts about their NCAA tournament resume, and, you know, I think had they lost today, it might have made for, you know, a little uneasiness. They at least erased that, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how they play tomorrow, given they really have nothing to lose, given that they're, you know, solidly in the tournament. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they play against Syracuse. If they win tomorrow, does it make up for Jerry McNamara's shot? No, nothing will ever make up for that. That's honestly, you know, I was asked by a writer about a month ago, what's the most heartbreaking loss as a sports fan? And, you know, if you're a Cincinnati sports fan, there's, you know, plenty to choose from. But that was the only Big East tournament I ever had a chance to go to. And it was a team, it was the Andy Kennedy year, so you knew they weren't going to be very good the next year. You knew it was going to be a long time before they came back to the tournament. It was a senior-laden team, and you knew the cupboard was bare. You knew Andy Kennedy wasn't going to get a chance to come back. And it was a really endearing team. It was a really fun season. They go to Madison Square Garden. They, you know, crawl from down, you know, 6 with about 5 minutes to go. Devin Downey misses a huge free throw, which could have iced the game after making a big steal. And then Jerry frickin' McNamara dribbles down the floor, travels, hoists a three, and they win it. And, you know, then if you remember, the next day they win because McNamara beats Connecticut the next day, and that was supposed to make me feel better? No, it made me feel worse. It was, and they showed it today during the Syracuse game. They showed it today during the Syracuse Connecticut game, and I can promise you, shortly before 7 o'clock tomorrow, ESPN will cram that down my face 8 or 9 times before tip-off.
It's funny you mentioned that because my co-host Steve here, he actually worked at Madison Square Garden for a few years. Steve, were you actually in attendance that day?
No, that was not the year I was there. I was actually like 4 or 5 years after that. But I was telling everyone on Twitter and everything that the Big East tournament, especially today and tomorrow, it is Madison Square Garden is the best place in all of America to be. The energy is off the charts, and I'm sure Mo could probably echo that. Yeah,
it's interesting. They say that tomorrow, the semifinals for the Big East tournament, which used to be on a Saturday, is the toughest ticket in New York City basketball. Now, the Knicks have been pretty much dreadful forever. Nobody really cares about the Nets, but they say it's the toughest ticket in New York City basketball, tougher than the final, tougher than today. And I would think with Syracuse being in it, you'll get some more Syracuse fans in the house, and the other game, dependent upon what happens in the second half between Louisville and Marquette, and obviously Notre Dame and South Florida, that could be a really fun semifinal round tomorrow in New York City.
Hey, speaking of...
Oh, go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry.
We're talking about South Florida and Notre Dame. South Florida played Syracuse really close. They won their first game against Villanova in a pretty ugly fashion, to be honest.
Yeah.
A big key with them here, I think, is that South Florida is a bubble team. If they lose tonight, it's going to be real tough for them to get an NCAA bid. They win, and I think they're in. I think a big motivation factor is payback of a 60-49 beating on January 10th from the Irish. What do you think about that game tonight?
South Florida is interesting, and they were talking about it on the TV broadcast last night. There are all sorts of styles of play. There's all sorts of paces that you could play at, but I think it's really hard. I think it's really hard when you're going to have to limit possessions, and when you're going to have to play the game in the 50s, and they've played games recently, including one against Cincinnati in the 40s. It's really hard to be disciplined, and they're obviously very limited from a skill perspective. They're not good offensively, and if you get them in a game that goes up and down, you're probably going to beat them. But there have been some pretty good teams that have had a hard time getting the game up and down. Syracuse, for the better part of that game until the 26-1 run, couldn't speed the game up. Cincinnati couldn't. Villanova couldn't last night. Villanova's, not very good, but normally they're able to kind of, get the game moving up and down a little bit. West Virginia couldn't with one of the best players in the conference. I would. Yeah, Stan Heath is a pretty good basketball coach too. I watched his Kent State team in 2002 with nobody who ever played a minute in the NBA. Beat some really good teams and got to the Elite Eight. I thought he kind of had things on the right track at Arkansas for a while, and then he moved on. They make things so miserable defensively. They make teams play at their pace. They're probably in the Big East the hardest team to play, and they're probably in the Big East the toughest team to figure out how to beat across 40 minutes. That said, I have a hard time picking them against the Notre Dame team. But, if you think back to a week and a half ago, if you watched Notre Dame score 41 against Georgetown on that Monday night, if they shoot the ball as poorly as they did against South Florida, number one, let's count it, first team to 40 wins. Second of all, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bulls won, and if they did, I think at that point you have to put them in the tournament.
Yeah, I definitely think they've got that. It's an all or nothing thing for them at this point. They're going to come out motivated, and you're right. I mean, they can certainly make you plod along and keep you in a defensive game where there's not a lot of opportunity for scoring. A lot of people going into the tournament thought that, respectively, Syracuse, Marquette, and Georgetown, albeit if Syracuse doesn't stumble, they're going to be the ones who have the chance to win the whole thing. Not a lot of love for the Irish. Notre Dame, beat number one Syracuse undefeated at home. Albeit Fab Melo was sidelined, but do you think the Irish can take it all the way in the Big East tournament?
I do, because I don't love, and it sounds strange for a team that's lost one game. I just don't love Syracuse's team. They obviously have an extraordinary amount of depth. They can essentially run two units at people. I just don't love. I think sometimes they're a little bit too reliant on getting turnovers. And honestly, I think that's why UC has a shot tomorrow, because they take care of the basketball. I wouldn't be surprised to see Syracuse lose tomorrow. I'm not going to pick Cincinnati, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a team like UC get hot from outside, upset them, and then I think if Cincinnati were to advance to the final, if you're looking at, Marquette, who I know they just beat, and Marquette's down by 10 right now. Marquette's a bad matchup for Cincinnati. I'll be totally frank with you. I think Marquette mailed in that game at Fifth Third Arena a week ago. Louisville can still be very, very dangerous, and they've actually played well so far in this tournament. And the Notre Dame team that Cincinnati saw the first week in January is clearly not the Notre Dame team that, really for a while was, outside of Syracuse, the hottest team in the Big East for a couple of weeks. I don't think there's anything beyond the ordinary suggesting that Notre Dame could win this tournament. I think all these teams are flawed, and Syracuse is obviously the prohibitive favorite, especially now that they've already won a game and beat a Connecticut team that seems like they never lose in a Big East tournament. But I don't love their team. I don't think they. Frankly, I've seen them play up close. I don't think they like each other very much. I don't think they will be able to thrive in close situations against really good competition. That's not to say they're not talented enough to win the national title. I think they are, but I still think there are some chinks in the armor.
Well, Mo, let me ask you this, just kind of, when you're at, there's always gym talk between guys, and it seems like I always get this when people ask me about Mike Bray, or people give me their opinion where they say, he's a great coach, but he can't recruit players on the court. This is the first time we've ever had a not Notre Dame guy on our show, I guess you could say. From the outside perspective, what are your thoughts on Coach Bray as a basketball coach?
That's what you hear. That's the knock you hear. That from an X's and O's perspective, he has few peers. From a motivational perspective, he has few peers. I am probably the biggest college basketball fan who doesn't like to read recruiting magazines. I just don't put any stock into them. I mean, for years, and I'll bring it back to being a UC fan for so long. I'd hear about how so-and-so was, the best big man that they've ever recruited, and the guy couldn't play, or so-and-so was just going to, he was going to be the best point guard since Nick Van Exel, and he would never play a game. I don't really read into that stuff. I think it's so hard to project how good those guys are going to be, and that's outside of the top, 10 to 15 players. Obviously, the kids that John Calipari gets at Kentucky, those guys are going to be special. But most of the other players, I think it's really hard to project how good they're going to be. And so I think there has to be something said about getting players who aren't thought of by the people that write recruiting magazines and the people who, put together the list on Rivals or Scout.com, and still getting those players to compete in a league like the Big East. I think the unfortunate thing with Notre Dame recently is that Mike Bray's best teams have coincided with the league being absolutely incredible. Now, I wouldn't say that this year because the Big East is, and I think most would agree, down. But if you look at from 2007 through last year, the league was insanely tough, really hard to compete in. And I think the fact that he's gotten, for the most part, to the NCAA tournament and having a guy like Luke Herringody for as long as he did has had a lot to do with the success they've had in the Big East. But I've always thought with Notre Dame, and I think you could say this about a handful of other teams in the league, I wonder what it would be like if you put them in almost any other league in the country. Would those athletes hold up? Would those teams hold up? I think the answer is yes. And I think this league has taken sometimes so much out of teams that by the time they get to the NCAA tournament, they have nothing left in the tank. And I think it's going to be interesting moving forward because the league is going to take a hit. Syracuse isn't going to be in it. Obviously, Pittsburgh moving forward, West Virginia. I think there are some ancillary benefits to some of the teams in the league, and Mick Cronin has talked about this. I think Mike Bray's talked about this. There's going to be some benefits to the teams in the league that aren't normally at the top, but that might not have to go through the 2-month grind that is a Big East schedule. And I think a team like Notre Dame is one of those that I think of first when I think of teams. If the league stays as is for what we think it's going to be for the next couple of years, Notre Dame could be very, very good. As far as Mike Bray's recruiting, you read that this is his best recruiting class, but I take all of that stuff, the incoming class, I take all that stuff with a very, very large grain of salt.
And, that's kind of a really good point, because if you remember, where you cover, you're where I am, no matter how much you talk about the Bearcats, you're always going to have a big UK fan base. It seems like the things people say about Mike Bray were the same things they were saying about Tubby Smith during his time at Kentucky, where, he wasn't bringing in the guys that Calipari's bringing in, but he was still putting good teams on the floor. And in my way, it's kind of, maybe you disagree, I kind of always compare Mike Bray to Tubby Smith's situation in that case.
Yeah, I don't think anybody ever doubted Tubby Smith's coaching acumen. I think he was kind of at the wrong place. I think I just watched his team play, and they're kind of going through a rebuilding year at Minnesota. I just think he was at the wrong place. Unfortunately at Kentucky, it's not like here, like it or not, and I tend to not. We talk college basketball from the end of the Bengals season until March. Well, in Kentucky, that's all they talk about. And so they pour over recruiting, and they sort through all the rankings. And I talk to friends of mine who do what I do in Lexington and Louisville, and that's all they talk about is college basketball recruiting. They can name for you every high school player on Kentucky's radar, and not just the ones that are potentially going to sign this year. They could tell you about kids 2 or 3 years down the road. Well, when you're coaching a basketball crazed school with that fan base, they're going to pay attention and pick apart everything you do. I would say, yeah, he obviously hasn't recruited to the level that John Calipari has, but the dude also did go to like 5 Sweet 16s and a bunch of Elite Eights, and he did take a team and won the national championship. That's pretty good, and I think he's best suited at a place where maybe they don't care nearly as much, and the recruiting isn't going to be as good as it's supposed to be at Kentucky, but he can still coach those players and win. I will say this: I've heard Mike Bray talk in the past about not wanting players who are going to leave after a year or two, and if you want to win a national championship, and if you look at the sport over the last 10 or 11 years, there haven't been too many national titleists who have won the whole thing who haven't had a future NBA guy on their team. And not maybe a future NBA star, but a guy who is starting in the NBA right now. Joakim Noah is starting for the Chicago Bulls. Florida won back-to-back titles with him. Carolina, a lot of NBA guys. I don't think you could have that hard and fast rule. I think you have to be a little bit flexible. And if I were to make, one criticism against Mike Bray's overall philosophy, I would say that the unwillingness to recruit a guy simply because he might leave after a year or two is that's not going to fly.
And I know we're talking basketball here, but I have to ask this because I was listening to you on there when this happened. Obviously there's always going to be a connection in football between Notre Dame and Cincinnati. The whole Brian Kelly thing, he came here. Can you remember a crazier day on the radio than when that day happened when he came to Notre Dame from Cincinnati?
That week of radio, I still can't think of anything, of any one topic that drew phone calls, emails, tweets like that. And it wasn't even really just that week. I would say it was the week leading up to the game against Pittsburgh, his last game at UC, and then the week where he took the gig. We had a good Bengals team that year, and it's December, and they're going to the playoffs, and I don't recall getting a Bengal phone call that week for a program. And whenever UC has lost a football coach, whether it's been D'Antonio or Brian Kelly, I've always said, if the same amount of people would have gone to games 10 years ago to get mad at the coach leaving, they could have renovated Nippert Stadium a long time ago. No, I can't. And it was just so. It was one of those stories that had just so many different angles to it. There was, obviously what was happening with the team at the time and them going 12-0 and the coach leaving before the bowl game. There was, the school's efforts or what some thought was lack thereof to keep them. There was just I think some were still getting over the hurt feelings of both Mark D'Antonio leaving and Bob Huggins being whacked, and this felt like for some, like another guy being, having the rug pulled out from underneath him or pulling the rug out from underneath the fan base. There were so many different things at play there that it was. I've been working there for 14 years. From a sports talk radio perspective, I can't remember a more polarizing, more just passion-driven week of sports talk radio around one topic, which is if you factor in everything the Bengals give us, everything the Reds give us, college basketball, it amazes me that one UC football topic drove interest the way it did that week. It was, and still does. I still get emails about Brian Kelly.
Yeah, and I think you made the best point when you said if these people, this may be bitter, may sound rude of me, but you said if these people were going to UC games 10 years ago, this would never have been an issue. I've been in this area, the Northern Kentucky, Greater Cincinnati area, my whole life, and I barely remember anyone talking about UC. I mean, I remember the Gino Goodoli days. Everyone liked their football team for a little bit, but no one ever cared until it seemed like Coach Kelly came there. It seemed like that was the big thing. So, now, even today, when I'm walking down the street or I'm going to work and I'm having a Notre Dame hoodie on, I still get snarls, I still get glares, and
sure, it's
just a crazy thing to me.
Yeah, I think the interest started to spike a little bit the year before Brian got there. Simply, they won some games late. They had started to, Mark D'Antonio doesn't get the credit he deserves for recruiting local. And, my belief with that football program was, look, this isn't a great college football city. It's a high school football city. It's an NFL city. But people will come and watch local kids play. There'll be an interest there. And so, and there's good high school football in Cincinnati. And you're not going to get maybe the kid who wants to go to Ohio State or who's always dreamt of going to Notre Dame. But there's still some Big East caliber football players in Cincinnati. And, I don't think Rick Minner was the guy to, he never really recruited Cincinnati all that much. Mark D'Antonio made a point of recruiting Cincinnati, and I think that started to help the interest build a little bit. I think, going into the Big East played a part. But you're right. They needed a personality. I remember the summer before Brian Kelly coached a game or coached a regular season game at UC, going to get a drink at a place on the west side with my wife's family, and here comes Brian Kelly, Kerry Combs, and like some kid carrying a public address system, and they literally, like a politician making a stump speech, started to recruit people to come to football games, which clearly he doesn't have to do at Notre Dame. And so it was, and I thought it was smart. I thought it was really, really smart. I thought it was effective. They needed that kind of personality, and it worked. He got people. The one thing I think they lack now, and I talked about it coming into this past season, is they didn't. They have such a limited budget when it comes to marketing and stuff like that. Well, when you have a coach who's a walking quote or a walking soundbite, who's willing to stir the pot, who's trying to get on the front page of the paper, from what I do for a living, it's great. He gives me talk radio topics. Butch Jones doesn't do that. Now, that's fine, because I think Butch is a pretty solid football coach, but he's not a marketer. He's not a sales guy. He's not a big personality. And maybe the program doesn't need that to the extent that it did 4 years ago, but it did back in 2007. And aside from going 34-6, Brian Kelly did that. It's why. But you get back to what people were saying back then. And I made this point last summer. Is when he left to go to Notre Dame, you heard people complaining about the lack of loyalty for the program, and then, from last season to this, the season ticket base fell by about 25%. And I said on the radio, everybody who was complaining about loyalty turned in their season tickets. That's very, very ironic. You can complain about loyalty, and it can complain about it being all for the kids, and you want it from the coach, but the first time they go 4-8, you turn in your tickets. Don't complain about loyalty if you're not willing to be loyal yourself. And as you can imagine, many people didn't like that.
Steve, Jason, you guys see what I deal with on a day-to-day basis in Cincinnati sports?
It's all over the country, and it's funny because, I grew up in Southern California as a Notre Dame fan. You talk about fans. This is 100% the truth, and you could ask people that were going there. The Coliseum where USC played in the early 90s, that thing was rarely half full, other than for Notre Dame and for UCLA. So winning breeds fandom, and it's true at every sport and every level. It's going to be true for the Bengals. It's going to be true for Cincinnati. And Notre Dame is one of those rare places that they're going to pack the house all the time. But Southern California is not a true college football town, much like other major cities. And it's just funny to hear you say that. And now USC, everyone thinks they're the greatest dynasty ever when they've really not done that much. So it's funny to hear that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting here. I mean, for so long, Cincinnati football, UC football was an afterthought, and it's not now. I mean, it's into the collective consciousness of your average UC sports fan, but it's also a very fickle fan base, and I don't say that condescendingly. That's I think it's reflective of what happened with the basketball program in the middle of the decade and the school essentially shutting it down. The roots of the football program are not dug deeply enough into the city's fabric for them to withstand many years of losing. And it's also, look, we're in Ohio State's backyard. They're not too far away from Notre Dame, and obviously there's a massive fan base for that here. We're on the border of or close to the border of SEC country, and so there's always going to be, I think, from many UC fans, both sports, football and basketball, sort of an inferiority complex. I think basketball, there are many who are always looking over their shoulders at the University of Kentucky, wondering why they can't be that. And I think there's some, UC football fans who are always looking over at what's happening in Columbus and wondering why the school can't be that. And it's not to say that one day away in the future they can't, but you don't go from 2-10 in Conference USA and drawing 27 people to your games to all of a sudden being a national power. There's a number of steps you have to take along the way. Interest has something to do with that. The budget has a lot to do with that. This is not an athletic department that spends a lot on sports. And the quality of coaches and recruits and the ability to retain them has a lot to do with that. You just don't overnight go from a non-entity to being able to compete consistently in terms of recruits or otherwise with programs who have put out consistently great football product for 100 years. And I think there's a lot of UC fans that have a hard time coming to grips with that.
For sure. And one more question before I know we want to get back to basketball talk. I know that you said last year you came to South Bend for the UC Notre Dame basketball game. And again, this is just me being curious from a guy's outside perspective, because everyone we talk to, they're obviously going to hold Notre Dame on a pedestal because, this is what we grew up loving. What's it like for you when you walk past Notre Dame Stadium? What's it like for you when you're on Notre Dame's campus?
Cool. I've been for basketball 3 times. Have yet to attend a football game, and I'm, aching to change that. But it's just cool. Just it's a town sort of out of the 60s. It's when you see something on TV every week, when you see Notre Dame Stadium and you see Touchdown Jesus. I mean, whether you like them or not, I mean, if you like sports, you've seen that on the tube. It's really, really cool. I like the gym they play in. I like the Joyce Center. It's one of the only basketball arenas I've been to with almost no signage. It's completely in the round. They draw very well. You sort of feel like you're in an old school arena that they've made some additions to, and they've improved upon it from the first time I was there. Whatever it was, 5 or 6 years ago. But it's cool. I mean, it's one of, if not the most famous university in the country. I don't know how you couldn't think it's pretty slick to get a chance to go there. And the only problem is every time I've gone, my Bearcats have lost. So if they could change that at some point, it would be great. But the experience is always cool, and the people are always really nice.
Hey, Mo, a lot of people, traditionalists with going back to football, a lot of people, that I personally have spoken to, and I've heard a lot of opinions, they're completely against the Jumbotron at Notre Dame Stadium, or they're completely against field turf, or there was a big uproar about the new helmets this year, and it's not tradition, and what's your take on that? Do you think that that's not a breaking of tradition? A lot of I talked with some people in Notre Dame athletics this year, and one of them told me that hey, if there were Jumbotrons around when Duke Rockne was the coach, we would have been the first, stadium in the country to have a Jumbotron. What's your thought on that? I mean, as far as tradition, I mean, everybody knows the tradition of Notre Dame Stadium, but, tradition is winning football, and if you can get a crowd motivated, because, everybody knows that it's a big thing, that Notre Dame it's a quiet stadium compared to a lot of others. What's your take on that?
I think you can do both. I think, I've been to Yankee Stadium, and I don't like the New York Yankees, but I've been to Yankee Stadium, and you could absorb and learn about and take in the tradition of, the house that Ruth built and still check out their modern-day stadium with all the amenities. I think you have to evolve. I think you have to evolve in life. I think you have to evolve in sports. I think it would be interesting if, given how rabid the Notre Dame fan base is, if a five-star recruit publicly stated, well, I was going to go to Notre Dame except the stadium was too outdated, all of a sudden we want a Jumbotron, or all of a sudden we want modern amenities. And how strong a connection there is between that sort of stuff and recruiting, I don't know. But I think you can do both. I think you can uphold, the traditions of obviously a storied program, and you can tell those stories, and you can maintain it, and you can pass that on from generation to generation, but still, evolve. Wrigley Field's evolved. I still kind of detest the Cubs, but the Wrigley Field's evolved, and nobody's the worse for wear. Yankee Stadium's evolved. No one's the worse for wear. Pauley Pavilion at UCLA has changed. The program's a mess, but I don't think it's because Pauley Pavilion all of a sudden has gotten an update. I think you have to evolve. Times change, kids change, recruits change, fans change. I think you have to be more up to date. Look, they played a game this season, Notre Dame and Michigan, with lights in Ann Arbor, and people went nuts about that. And aside from the result from your standpoint, it was one of the more exciting football games of the season, and nobody complained about the fact that it was a night. Matter of fact, more people probably got to see it. I just think you have to be open to evolving, and you could still, you don't have to sell out. You don't have to make it look like an arena football stadium. But I do think you can evolve, and I do think there are some recruiting benefits and some benefits to your fan base that the program can certainly take advantage of if they were to update things just a little bit. Maybe you could argue that part of the problem with the program as a whole has been an unwillingness to adapt and evolve over the last couple of decades. And if they start forward thinking a little bit more, and I think Brian Kelly will push them in that direction, maybe they'll get some the kind of results people expect or hope for on the field as well.
Yeah, and Jack Swarbrick is very, progressive like that, and it's a good thing to see. But now you had to go up and bring up my Cubs. I'm here in South Bend, so I'm just a stone's throw from Chicago. Really? Come on, man. All I got to say is, you know what the biggest upgrade the Cubs have made is Theo Epstein, and you know what? The Cubs are killing it. I know it's spring training, but they have.
Oh, come on.
They have. Hey. They've got the best hitting percentage out of any club in Major League Baseball right now. Now, I'm one of these guys that say always next year, but, yeah, you had to go and measure my Cubs. Man, come on.
Well, there's nothing less comebackable than yelling 1908 at a Cubs fan. There just
You're absolutely right.
And I say this as a Bengals fan who hears 19 never from everybody, so it's okay. But, look, we have in common a hatred of the St. Louis Cardinals. So there you go.
Exactly. There you go.
For sure. I actually really enjoyed that JPEG you guys posted on your Facebook today. This is your brain on drugs. That was awesome.
Well, as an Angel fan, I'd like to once again make sure you all are thanking us and more likely the American League, because we've created a bit of a path taking on Mr. Pujols as well as Cabrera up in Detroit, and we created a clearer path to the playoffs for you guys, especially with 5 teams going to make it this year. So you guys got a shot, a better shot than you did before.
We'll take it.
Okay, I'll take anything I can get, man. You're right. It's been. Hey, we're due. We're way overdue.
Yeah, they're due. Yeah.
Well, Mo, man, it was awesome having you come on here. One last question before we let you go. Who wins tonight? If you have to make a pick, if you're a betting man, who wins, Notre Dame or South Florida?
I just think Notre Dame has better players. I think Notre Dame is going to be able to make outside shots against South Florida. Stan Heath has done a nice job. They're going to try to slow the game down. But Notre Dame has earned a double bye for a reason. They're simply a better basketball team. I think they're better than they've shown over the last couple of weeks. I think they're going to play well in Madison Square Garden. They played well there last year. I think they beat UC by 41 or so points. I think I wouldn't discount a team playing with purpose tonight as South Florida will, given that if they win tonight, they're most likely in. But I just think Notre Dame's the better basketball team. I think we're going to see Notre Dame and Louisville and Cincinnati and Syracuse, on which should be a fun Friday night tomorrow.
For sure, man. Did you renew your season ticket this year for the Reds?
I did. 20-game package, Moon Deck, Section 141. I'll be there.
All right, I'm in 103 Row D, so we'll have to meet up, catch a beer or something.
That'd be big. I'll do that.
Yeah. Well, Mo, like I said when you came on, you are my favorite radio host, and I always appreciate your radio show, and it was cool to have you on here. And here's to hoping one day I can be on your show sometime.
Anytime. We'll do it. It'd be great.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us, Mel.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Mel.
Yep. See you guys.